The summer of 1876 brought relentless heat to the Wyoming territory, but for Sophia Ellis, the real fire was yet to come. She wiped her brow with the back of her hand as she guided her oxen along the dusty trail, the vast prairie stretching endlessly around her wagon. 3 weeks into her journey west from St. Louis, she was beginning to wonder if she had made the greatest mistake of her 21 years. "Just a bit farther, Moses," she coaxed the lead ox, who plodded forward with the same steady determination he'd shown since they'd left Missouri. Her deceased father's pocket watch indicated it was nearly 5 o'clock. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the trail, painting the landscape in amber and gold. She would need to find a place to make camp soon. Sophia's life had changed dramatically in the past year. Both her parents had succumbed to influenza within weeks of each other, leaving her alone with a modest inheritance and the family's dry goods store. But running the store had proven difficult for a young, unmarried woman. The constant battle against the condescension of male suppliers and customers had worn her down until her friend Julia's letter arrived from Wyoming, describing a town called Sweetwater, where women could vote and own businesses without the constant scrutiny she faced in St. Louis. So she had sold the store, purchased a wagon and supplies, and set off with little more than determination and hope. The journey had been lonely but manageable until now. Sophia smelled smoke before she saw it, a thin tendril rising from the back of her wagon. Her heart quickened as she pulled hard on the reins. "Whoa, whoa there!" The oxen stopped, and Sophia climbed down, her boots hitting the hard, packed dirt as she rushed to investigate. To her horror, a small flame had taken hold of the canvas covering at the rear of the wagon. One of the lanterns must have tipped over, igniting some of her supplies. No, no, no. Sophia grabbed her water canteen, but the meager amount did nothing against the growing flames. The fire caught the dry canvas eagerly, spreading with alarming speed. She tried beating at it with her shawl, but the flames only grew higher, threatening everything she owned. Panic seized her. She was miles from the nearest settlement, alone on the trail with her entire future going up in smoke. She grabbed at her father's books, her mother's silver, anything she could rescue, but the heat pushed her back. Then she heard it, the thundering of hooves. A rider appeared on the horizon, galloping toward her at breakneck speed. As he drew closer, Sophia could make out a tall figure on a chestnut stallion, dust billowing behind them. The rider pulled his horse to a stop and dismounted in one fluid motion. Without a word, he yanked off his long duster coat and began beating at the flames with powerful, decisive strokes. "Get back, miss," he shouted, his voice deep and commanding. Sophia stumbled backward, watching as this stranger fought the fire that threatened to consume everything she owned. His movements were quick and methodical, smothering the flames section by section with his coat. Sweat glistened on his forehead, dampening his light brown hair. The fire hissed and sputtered under his relentless assault. After what seemed like an eternity but could only have been minutes, the last flame died beneath his coat. The acrid smell of burnt canvas and wood hung in the air, but the wagon still stood. Blackened and damaged but not destroyed. The man stood, breathing heavily, his coat ruined. He turned to face her, and Sophia found herself looking into the most striking blue eyes she had ever seen. "Are you all right, madam?" he asked, his voice gentler now. "Yes," Sophia managed, her own voice shaky. "Thanks to you, Mr. Samuel Yeardley," he replied, touching the brim of his hat. "Most folks just call me Sam." Sophia felt a strange flutter in her chest that had nothing to do with the fire. "Sophia Ellis," she said, extending her hand. "I can't thank you enough, Mr. Yeardley." His hand enveloped hers, calloused but warm. "Sam," he corrected with a slight smile, "and anyone would have done the same." Not everyone would ruin their coat in the process, Sophia said, gesturing to the smoldering remains of his duster. Sam shrugged, seemingly unconcerned about the loss. Coats can be replaced. Wagons and their contents, especially out here, not so easily. He walked around the wagon, assessing the damage with practiced eyes. You're lucky. The frame's intact. We can repair the canvas well enough to get you to the next town. Sophia questioned, raising an eyebrow. I can hardly leave a lady alone on the trail with a damaged wagon, Sam said, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. Where are you headed, Sweetwater? Something flickered across his face, recognition, perhaps surprise. That's where I'm coming from. I'm heading back to my ranch about 20 miles south of there. Sophia considered her options, which were admittedly limited. She was alone with a damaged wagon, and night would fall soon. This man had already saved her possessions. Was it so far-fetched to trust him a bit further? I'd be much obliged for your help, Mr. Yeardley, Sam, she amended when he gave her a look. But I don't want to delay your journey. No delay, he assured her, but we should make camp soon. The wagon needs repairs before you can continue, and there's a creek not far from here that would make a good spot. As Sam helped guide her oxen toward the creek, Sophia studied him surreptitiously. He rode tall in the saddle, his shoulders broad beneath his plain cotton shirt. His face was tanned from the sun, with lines at the corners of his eyes that suggested he smiled often, though at the moment his expression was serious as he scanned their surroundings. They made camp near the creek, the water providing a gentle background music as they worked together to assess the damage to Sophia's wagon. The rear quarter was badly burned, the canvas destroyed, and some of the wooden slats charred. The good news, Sam said as he examined the wagon, is that the frame is solid. We can replace these boards and rig up some temporary covering to protect your goods from the elements. Sophia asked again. Sam looked at her, a hint of amusement in his eyes. Unless you're handy with a saw and hammer. Sophia had to admit she wasn't. Her father had never taught her such things, believing a lady shouldn't concern herself with manual labor. I can cook, she offered instead. If you have any food in your saddlebags, I could prepare us a meal while you work. I've got some jerky and beans, Sam said. Not much of a feast. I have flour and salt pork, Sophia replied. Between us, we might manage something decent. As the sun began to set, Sam worked on the wagon while Sophia prepared their meal. She mixed flour and water to make a simple dough, sliced the salt pork thin, and used Sam's small skillet to cook it over the fire. The resulting flatbread with fried pork wasn't fancy, but it was hot and filling. This is better than anything I've had in weeks, Sam said appreciatively as they sat by the fire. It's the least I can do, Sophia replied, watching the firelight play across his features. If you hadn't come along when you did. But I did, Sam said simply. What brought you this way? Sophia asked. It seems providential. Sam poked at the fire with a stick. I was in Sweetwater selling some horses, taking a slightly longer route home to check on some land I'm considering purchasing. You raise horses, among other things. Started with a small herd after the war, built it up over the years. The war? Sophia asked, though she could guess the answer. Served with the Union cavalry, Sam said, his tone suggesting he didn't care to elaborate. Sophia nodded, respecting his reticence. Many men who had fought didn't like to speak of it. And now you have a ranch. A modest one, he said. But it's mine, free and clear. They fell into comfortable silence, the crackling of the fire and the gentle murmuring of the creek the only sounds in the gathering darkness. What takes you to Sweetwater? Sam finally asked. Not many women travel alone out here. Sophia told him about her parents, the store and Julia's letter describing opportunities for women in Wyoming. As she spoke, she realized how foolhardy her journey must seem to someone who knew the territory. "It sounds silly now," she admitted. "Setting off alone across the country based on one letter." "Not silly," Sam said thoughtfully. "Brave, maybe a bit reckless, but brave nonetheless." Julia wrote that Wyoming women can vote, own property, run businesses, all without a husband to speak for them. Sam nodded. "That's true. Wyoming's different that way, but it's still rough country. Not easy for anyone, let alone a woman alone." "Are you suggesting I turn back?" Sophia asked, a hint of defiance in her voice. "No," Sam said, meeting her gaze directly. "I'm suggesting you know what you're getting into. Sweetwater's a decent town, but it's still frontier. Harsh winters, occasional drought, and not all men are happy about women having rights." "I'm not afraid of hard work or harsh weather," Sophia said. "And as for men who don't approve, well, I've dealt with those my entire life." Sam smiled then, a genuine smile that transformed his serious face. "I believe you have, Miss Ellis." That night, Sophia slept in her wagon while Sam made his bed near the fire. Despite the day's excitement and the presence of a stranger nearby, she slept soundly, lulled by exhaustion and the strange sense of security Sam's presence provided. Morning dawned clear and cool. Sophia woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of hammering. She dressed quickly and climbed down from the wagon to find Sam already at work, replacing the damaged boards with fresh wood he must have cut from nearby trees. "You're up early," she said, accepting the cup of coffee he offered. "Sun's up, so am I," he replied. Force of habit from ranch life. They shared a simple breakfast, and then Sam continued his repairs while Sophia took stock of her supplies. She was relieved to find that most of her belongings had survived the fire. Some books were singed. A trunk of clothing smelled of smoke, but overall the damage could have been much worse. By midday, Sam had replaced the damaged wood and fashioned a covering from oilcloth he had in his saddlebags. "It's not pretty," he said, wiping sweat from his brow, "but it'll keep the rain out until you reach Sweetwater." "It's wonderful," Sophia said sincerely. "I don't know how to thank you." "No need," Sam said, but he looked pleased at her praise. They packed up camp and prepared to continue their respective journeys. Sophia felt a surprising reluctance to part ways with this man who had come to her rescue so providentially. "How far to Sweetwater?" she asked as she checked the harnesses on her oxen. 4 days, give or take," Sam replied. "If the weather holds." Sophia nodded, trying to hide her apprehension at continuing alone. "Well then, I suppose this is goodbye." Sam looked at her for a long moment, then at the sky. "It's still early," he said finally. "If you don't mind company, I could ride with you a ways." Relief flooded through Sophia, though she tried not to show it too plainly. "I'd appreciate that very much," she said. They set off, Sam riding alongside her wagon. The day passed pleasantly, with Sam pointing out landmarks and telling her about the territory. Sophia found him to be an excellent guide, knowledgeable about the land and its history. "That ridge over there," Sam said, pointing to a distant line of hills. "The Cheyenne call it Sleeping Wolf. If you look at it just right, you can see why." Sophia squinted, tilting her head. "I see it. The shape does resemble a wolf lying down." "The local tribes know every inch of this land," Sam said. "I've learned a lot from them over the years." "You have good relations with the Indians?" Sophia asked, curious. "With some," Sam said carefully. "The situation's complex. There's been trouble raids, broken treaties, misunderstandings on both sides. But I've tried to deal fairly with them, and they've mostly done the same with me." As the sun began to set, they made camp near a small stand of cottonwoods. This time, Sam contributed some freshly caught fish from a stream they had crossed, and Sophia prepared them simply with salt and herbs she had packed for the journey. "You're a good cook, Miss Ellis," Sam said as they ate. "Sophia, please," she said, "and thank you. My mother taught me. She always said the way to make a house a home was through good food and better conversation. Your mother sounds wise." "She was," Sophia said softly. "I miss her. Both my parents," Sam nodded, understanding in his eyes. "I lost my father when I was 16. Mother followed 5 years later while I was away fighting." "I'm sorry," Sophia said, meaning it. "Do you have other family?" "A sister in Denver," Sam replied. "Married with 3 children. I see them when I can, which isn't often enough." The conversation flowed easily between them, and Sophia found herself telling Sam things she'd never shared with anyone: her fears about starting over in a new place, her doubts about her decision to leave St. Louis, her dreams for the future. "I want to open a bookshop," she confessed. "My father had quite a collection, and I've always loved reading. Julia wrote that Sweetwater has a school but no proper bookstore." "It doesn't," Sam confirmed. "The general store carries some penny dreadfuls and almanacs, but nothing substantial. A bookshop would be a welcome addition." "Do you read, Mr. Yeardley?" "Sam," he reminded her with a smile. "And yes, when I can. Winters are long on the ranch. Books make good company." The next morning dawned with a hint of gray in the sky. Sam frowned as he looked up. "Weather's changing. We should make good time today, just in case." They traveled steadily, stopping only briefly to rest the oxen. By mid-afternoon, dark clouds had gathered on the western horizon and a cool breeze had picked up. "Storm coming," Sam said, his expression grim. "We need to find shelter." "Is there a town nearby?" Sophia asked anxiously. "No, but I know a place," Sam said. "An old trapper's cabin about 2 miles off the trail. If we hurry, we might reach it before the rain hits." They turned off the main trail, the wagon jolting over the uneven ground. The wind grew stronger, whipping at Sophia's hair and making the oxen restless. Sam rode ahead, leading the way through increasingly rough terrain. Just as the first fat raindrops began to fall, a small log cabin came into view, nestled against a rocky outcropping. It looked weathered but solid. "Hurry," Sam called, dismounting and rushing to help guide the oxen. They managed to get the animals under a lean-to attached to the cabin just as the skies opened up. Rain poured down in sheets, driven by gusting wind. Sophia and Sam ran for the cabin door, both soaked within seconds. The interior was dusty but dry. A rough wooden table, 2 chairs, a stone fireplace, and a narrow cot were the only furnishings. "It's not much," Sam said, shaking water from his hat, "but it'll keep us dry." Sophia looked around, suddenly acutely aware of her situation. She was alone in a remote cabin with a man she had known for only 2 days. In St. Louis, such a circumstance would be scandalous beyond repair. Sam seemed to read her thoughts. "I'll sleep in the lean-to with the animals," he said, his tone matter of fact. "Don't be ridiculous," Sophia said, surprising herself. "It's pouring rain and that lean-to barely has a roof. You'd be soaked through by morning." Sam hesitated, clearly torn between propriety and practicality. "The floor will serve me fine," he finally said. "I've slept on worse." Outside, thunder cracked, making Sophia jump. The cabin was illuminated briefly by lightning, revealing Sam's face in sharp relief, concerned, kind, and undeniably handsome. "We should get a fire going," he said, moving to the fireplace. "It's going to get cold once the sun sets." While Sam built a fire, Sophia retrieved some provisions from her wagon during a brief lull in the rain. They made a simple meal, huddled near the growing warmth of the fire as the storm raged outside. "Will the wagon be safe?" Sophia asked, listening to the wind howl around the cabin. "The lean-to should protect it well enough," Sam assured her. "And the repair work will hold. The oilcloth is secured tight. As night fell, the storm showed no signs of abating. Wind rattled the cabin's single window and rain drummed steadily on the roof. Despite the noise, there was something cozy about their shelter, the fire casting dancing shadows on the rough log walls, the smell of wood smoke mixing with the scent of the stew they'd made. Sophia found herself studying Sam as he told her about his ranch, the house he'd built with his own hands, the horses he bred and trained, the small herd of cattle he maintained. His passion for his land was evident in every word, his blue eyes bright with pride. "You love it there," she observed. "I do," Sam acknowledged. "After the war I needed peace, space. The ranch gives me both." "Don't you get lonely?" Sophia asked before she could stop herself. Sam was quiet for a moment. "Sometimes," he admitted, "but I have good neighbors, though they're miles away. And I make it into town often enough." "No wife?" Sophia asked, then immediately flushed. "I'm sorry, that's terribly forward of me." Sam gave a small smile. "No apology needed, and no wife. I was engaged once right before the war, Elizabeth. She didn't wait." "I'm sorry," Sophia said softly. Sam shrugged. "It was a long time ago. She married a banker, has a fine house in Denver now, I hear." "Her loss," Sophia said with unexpected fierceness. Sam looked surprised, then chuckled. "Kind of you to say, though you hardly know me." "I know you rode toward a burning wagon to help a stranger," Sophia said. "I know you've delayed your journey home to ensure my safe passage. I'd say that tells me quite a bit about your character." Their eyes met across the fire, and something unspoken passed between them, a recognition, a connection that went beyond their brief acquaintance. The moment was broken by a particularly loud crash of thunder that made the cabin shake. Sophia gasped, and Sam instinctively moved closer to her. "Just the storm," he said, his voice low and reassuring. "The cabin stood through worse, I'd wager." They were sitting side by side now, shoulders almost touching. Sophia was acutely aware of his nearness, the way his presence seemed to fill the small space. "I should try to get some sleep," she said, suddenly needing distance. Sam nodded, moving back. "Of course. You take the cot. I'll be fine here by the fire." Sophia settled onto the narrow cot, pulling her shawl around her for warmth. Sam spread his bedroll on the floor nearby, throwing another log on the fire before stretching out. "Good night, Sophia," he said quietly. "Good night, Sam," she replied, watching as the firelight played across his features until her eyes grew heavy and she drifted off to sleep. The storm continued through the night, but by morning it had passed, leaving behind a washed, clean world. Sunlight streamed through the cabin's small window, waking Sophia. She found Sam already up, tending to the animals. "How are they?" she asked, joining him in the lean-to. "Fine," Sam said. "A bit restless from the storm, but no worse for wear." They shared a quick breakfast before preparing to depart. The trail would be muddy, making travel slower, but the clear sky promised good weather for the day. As they set out, Sophia found herself thinking about their arrival in Sweetwater. What would she do once they reached the town? Would Sam simply see her safely there and then continue on to his ranch? The thought left her feeling oddly bereft. The day passed slowly, the wagon wheels sometimes sinking into muddy patches that required Sam's horse to help pull them free. Despite these delays, Sophia found herself enjoying the journey, listening to Sam's stories about the territory and sharing her own tales of life in St. Louis. By late afternoon, they reached a spot that Sam declared perfect for camping, a small clearing near a river, sheltered by cottonwoods. "We're making good progress," he said as he helped unhitch the oxen. "Another 2 days should see us to Sweetwater, assuming no more storms." Sophia nodded, fighting a sense of disappointment. Only 2 more days of Sam's company. 2 more days before she would be on her own again, facing the uncertainty of starting over in a new place. As they prepared their evening meal, Sam seemed lost in thought, occasionally glancing at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "Is something wrong?" she finally asked. Sam hesitated, then said, "I've been thinking about your plans in Sweetwater, opening a bookshop." "Yes," Sophia prompted when he paused. "It's a good town, but as I said, still rough in ways. Finding a place to live, setting up a business, it won't be easy." "I'm prepared for that," Sophia said, though her confidence wavered slightly under his concerned gaze. "I'm sure you are," Sam said. "But I thought, that is, I know someone who might be able to help, widow named Martha Holden. She owns the boarding house in town. Good woman, fair-minded. She might be able to help you get settled, maybe even have a room available." "That's very thoughtful," Sophia said, touched by his consideration. "I'd appreciate an introduction." "Consider it done," Sam said, looking relieved. "Martha's been like a mother to half the town since her husband passed. She'll take you under her wing." As they sat by the fire after dinner, the conversation turned to their childhoods. Sam spoke of growing up on a small farm in Pennsylvania, his father's dream of going west cut short by an early death, his own determination to fulfill that dream after the war. "And you?" he asked. "What was life like for young Sophia Ellis?" "Ordinary, I suppose," she said. "My father's store did well enough that we were comfortable. I had schooling, which was more than many girls got. Learned to keep books for the store, to read and write well. My mother taught me household management, cooking, sewing, all the proper things a lady should know." "And now you're heading west to start a bookshop," Sam observed. "Not exactly what your parents might have expected." "No," Sophia agreed with a small smile. "I think they would have preferred I marry a respectable businessman and settle down to raise a family in St. Louis. No suitors back home?" Sam asked, his tone casual but his eyes watchful. "A few," Sophia admitted. "None that I cared for enough to consider seriously. My father's business partner's son was particularly persistent, but, Sam prompted when she trailed off. "He wanted the store more than he wanted me," Sophia said simply. "After my parents died, he made it clear that marriage would be a convenient way to acquire the business. I found the proposition somewhat less than romantic." Sam chuckled. "I can imagine." "So instead, you sold the store and headed west alone." "It sounds impulsive when you put it that way," Sophia said. "Determined," Sam corrected. "There's a difference." The next day brought clear skies and drier trails. They made good progress, stopping at midday near a small creek to rest the oxen and have a cold meal. As Sophia refilled their water containers from the creek, she noticed Sam scanning the horizon, his expression alert. "What is it?" she asked. "Probably nothing," he said. "Thought I saw dust in the distance. Could be riders, could be just wind." But his hand rested near his revolver, and when they continued their journey, he kept closer to the wagon than before, his gaze constantly sweeping their surroundings. By late afternoon, Sophia spotted it too, a dust cloud in the distance, moving toward them. "Riders," Sam confirmed, his voice tight. "4, maybe 5. Travelers?" Sophia suggested hopefully. "Maybe," Sam said, but his tone suggested otherwise. "Let's keep moving. There's a spot ahead where the trail narrows between 2 ridges. If they're just passing through, they'll go around." Sophia urged the oxen on, her heart beating faster as the dust cloud grew larger. Sam rode slightly ahead now, his posture tense. As they reached the narrow passage Sam had mentioned, he motioned for her to stop the wagon. "Stay here," he said quietly. "If I wave you on, keep going, don't stop for anything." Before Sophia could protest, he rode forward to meet the approaching riders, his hand still near his weapon but not drawing it, a careful balance between caution and provocation. The riders came into view, 4 men on dusty horses, rough-looking and trail-worn. They slowed as they spotted Sam, spreading out slightly in a way that made Sophia's stomach tighten with apprehension. She couldn't hear the exchange, but she could see Sam's rigid posture, the way the lead rider gestured toward the wagon, the subtle shake of Sam's head. The tension was palpable even from a distance. After what seemed like an eternity but was probably only a minute or two, the riders moved off, taking a path that skirted around them. Sam watched them go, then rode back to the wagon. "Road agents," he said grimly, "looking for easy pickings." "Bandits?" Sophia asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Of a sort," Sam said. "They decided we weren't worth the trouble. Let's keep moving. I want to put some distance between us before we make camp." They traveled until dusk, both more subdued than they had been in previous days. When they finally stopped for the night, Sam insisted on a cold camp, no fire that might attract attention. "I'm sorry," he said as they ate a cheerless meal of jerky and hard bread. "I didn't mean to frighten you, but you should know the realities of the territory. It's not all as civilized as Sweetwater." "I understand," Sophia said, drawing her shawl tighter against the evening chill. "And I appreciate your honesty. Better to know the dangers than to be blind to them." They sat in companionable silence as darkness fell completely, the stars emerging in brilliant clarity above them. Without a fire, the night was cold, and Sophia shivered despite her shawl. "Here," Sam said, noticing her discomfort. He moved closer, offering his blanket. "This should help." "But you'll be cold," Sophia protested. "I'm used to it," Sam said, but he didn't move away after draping the blanket around her shoulders. They sat side by side, the warmth of his body seeping through the space between them. Sophia found herself leaning slightly toward him, drawn to his warmth and the sense of security his presence provided. "Thank you," she said softly. "Not just for the blanket, for everything. I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't come along when you did." In the starlight, she could just make out his profile as he turned to look at her. "I'm glad I was there," he said, his voice equally soft. "Riding the same trail at the same time, some might call it fate." "Do you believe in fate, Sam?" Sophia asked, suddenly breathless. "I didn't," he said slowly. "Not until recently." There was a weight to his words that made Sophia's heart beat faster. They were so close now that she could feel his breath, warm against her cheek. For a moment, she thought he might kiss her, wanted him to, she realized with a jolt of surprise. But Sam cleared his throat and moved back slightly. "We should try to get some rest," he said, his voice gruff. "Early start tomorrow." Sophia nodded, disappointment mingling with confusion at her own reactions. She had known this man for only 3 days. How could she be developing feelings for him so quickly? Sleep came fitfully that night. Her dreams a jumbled mix of burning wagons, ominous riders, and Sam's blue eyes looking at her in the starlight. Morning brought a return to their easy companionship, though there was an undercurrent of awareness between them that hadn't been there before. As they traveled, Sam pointed out landmarks, telling her they would reach the outskirts of Sweetwater by nightfall. "We'll stay at my friend Jim Bradford's place," Sam said. "His farm is about 5 miles outside town. He and his wife Mary are good folks. They'll welcome us." "Are you sure?" Sophia asked. "I don't want to impose." "No imposition," Sam assured her. "Jim owes me a favor or two. Besides, Mary loves company." True to Sam's prediction, they reached the Bradford farm just as the sun was setting. It was a pleasant homestead, a sturdy log house with smoke curling from the chimney, a barn and various outbuildings. Fields of wheat stretched behind it, golden in the fading light. A man emerged from the barn as they approached, raising his hand in greeting when he recognized Sam. "Sam Yeardley," he called. "What brings you by, Jim?" Sam replied, dismounting to shake the man's hand. "Hope you don't mind unexpected guests. This is Miss Sophia Ellis, heading to Sweetwater. We could use a place to stay for the night." Jim Bradford was a stocky man with a friendly face and work-roughened hands. He looked at Sophia with open curiosity but no suspicion. "Any friend of Sam's is welcome here," he said warmly. "Come on in. Mary's just putting supper on." Mary Bradford proved to be as welcoming as her husband, a plump, cheerful woman who immediately made Sophia feel at home. Their two children, a boy of about 10 and a girl of 8, watched the visitors with wide eyes until their mother shooed them to wash up for dinner. The meal was simple but abundant: roast chicken, potatoes, fresh bread, and apple pie for dessert. After days of trail food, it tasted like a feast to Sophia. As they ate, conversation flowed easily. Jim asked about Sam's ranch and horses, while Mary inquired about Sophia's journey and plans in Sweetwater. "A bookshop," Mary exclaimed when Sophia mentioned her intention. "How wonderful! The children are learning their letters at school, but we have so few books for them to practice with." "The town needs more books," Jim agreed, "and Sweetwater's growing. Good time to start a business there." "That's what my friend Julia wrote," Sophia said. "She's been there for 2 years now." "Julia Carter?" Mary asked. "The dressmaker?" "Yes, that's her," Sophia confirmed, pleased. "Do you know her?" "Not well, but I've had her make a dress or two when we can afford it," Mary said. "Fine work, and a nice woman. She speaks highly of Sweetwater." After dinner, Jim insisted on showing Sam some new colts he'd acquired, leaving Sophia to help Mary with the dishes. "So," Mary said once they were alone, her tone casual but her eyes keen, "how long have you known Sam?" "Only a few days," Sophia admitted. "My wagon caught fire on the trail and he happened to be passing by. He saved everything I own and then offered to escort me to Sweetwater." "That sounds like Sam," Mary said with a nod. "Always ready to help. He's a good man." "Yes, he seems to be," Sophia agreed, feeling a blush rise to her cheeks under Mary's knowing gaze. "Known him nearly 8 years now," Mary continued, handing Sophia a plate to dry. "Since he first came to the territory after the war. He helped Jim build this house, you know, stayed a month, working from sunup to sundown, wouldn't take a penny for it. He told me about his ranch," Sophia said. "He seems very proud of it." "As he should be," Mary said. "Built it from nothing. And it's a fine place now from what I hear. Jim's been there, though I haven't myself." Sophia wanted to ask more about Sam but hesitated, not wanting to appear too interested. Mary seemed to sense her curiosity, however. "He's been alone too long," she said, her voice softening. "Keeps to himself mostly, though he's always there if a neighbor needs help. I've tried to introduce him to every eligible woman in the county, but he's never shown much interest." There was a question in her statement, and Sophia felt herself blushing deeper. "We're just traveling companions," she said quickly. "He's been very kind, but I'm sure once we reach Sweetwater, he'll continue on to his ranch and that will be that." Mary gave her a skeptical look, but didn't press the issue. "Well, you're welcome to stay with us tomorrow night as well if you'd like. Sweetwater's not far, but there's no need to rush." "Thank you," Sophia said sincerely. "But I'm eager to reach town and find Julia. I appreciate your hospitality, though." When the men returned from the barn, they all sat in the Bradfords' cozy front room. The children showed Sophia their few precious books, and she promised to send them more once her shop was established. As the evening wore on, Sophia found her gaze drawn repeatedly to Sam. He was relaxed here among friends, smiling more readily, even laughing at Jim's stories. She liked this side of him, the man beyond the protective guide, the man who had friends and a history in this place she hoped to make her home. When it came time to retire, Mary showed Sophia to a small but comfortable bedroom, while Sam would sleep in the main room near the fire. "Sleep well," Mary said, patting Sophia's hand. "Tomorrow you'll see your new home." Alone in the bedroom, Sophia sat on the edge of the bed, thoughts swirling. Sweetwater was just a few hours away. By this time tomorrow, she would be there, starting her new life. And Sam would return to his ranch, their paths diverging. The realization brought an unexpected pang of sadness. In just a few days, Sam had become important to her in ways she hadn't anticipated. His strength, his kindness, his quiet competence all had made an impression. And there was something else, something deeper that she was only beginning to recognize. Morning came too quickly. Sophia dressed carefully in one of her better dresses, wanting to make a good impression when she arrived in Sweetwater. When she emerged from the bedroom, she found Sam and Jim already at the table, drinking coffee. Sam looked up as she entered, and something in his expression made her heart skip. He stood, almost knocking over his chair in his haste. "Good morning," he said, his eyes taking in her appearance. "You look very nice." "Thank you," Sophia replied, suddenly shy under his gaze. Breakfast was a cheerful affair, with the Bradford children peppering Sophia with questions about St. Louis and her journey. After the meal, they all helped load Sophia's wagon and prepare for departure. "You're always welcome here," Mary said as she hugged Sophia goodbye. "Don't be a stranger." "I won't," Sophia promised. "Thank you for everything." The journey to Sweetwater took less than 2 hours. As they crested a hill, the town came into view below them, a collection of wooden buildings along a wide main street, with houses and farms spreading outward. It was smaller than St. Louis, of course, but larger than Sophia had expected, with a church steeple rising prominently and what looked like a schoolhouse at the edge of town. "There it is," Sam said, reining his horse beside her wagon. "Sweetwater." Sophia felt a mixture of excitement and apprehension. This was what she had traveled so far to find: a fresh start, new opportunities. But now that she was here, the enormity of what she was undertaking hit her anew. As if sensing her thoughts, Sam said, "It's a good town. Good people mostly. You'll do well here." They made their way down the hill and onto the main street. Sophia was aware of curious glances from townspeople as they passed. A young woman alone would be notable enough. A young woman accompanied by Sam Yeardley seemed to provoke even more interest. "The boarding house is just ahead," Sam said, pointing to a large 2-story building with a wide porch. "Martha Holden runs it. Let's see if she has a room available." Martha Holden proved to be a formidable woman in her 60s, with silver hair pulled back in a severe bun and sharp eyes that missed nothing. Her stern expression softened when she saw Sam, however. "Samuel Yeardley," she said, her tone affectionate despite her brusque manner. "What brings you to town? Thought you just left a few days ago." "Hello, Martha," Sam replied with a smile. "I'd like you to meet Miss Sophia Ellis. She's new to Sweetwater, looking to open a bookshop, needs a place to stay while she gets settled." Martha's keen gaze assessed Sophia from head to toe. "A bookshop, is it? Well, we could certainly use one. As for rooms, I've got one available. 2nd floor, front corner, gets good light. $5 a week, includes breakfast and dinner." "That sounds perfect," Sophia said, relieved. "Thank you, Mrs. Holden." "Martha," the older woman corrected. "Everyone calls me Martha. Now, where's your luggage? I'll have my boy Thomas bring it up." As Thomas, a sturdy lad of about 16, began unloading Sophia's trunks, Sam pulled Martha aside for a quiet conversation. Sophia couldn't hear what was said, but she saw Martha nod several times, her expression serious. "Well," Sam said, returning to Sophia's side, "I should be heading back to my ranch. It's still a good half-day's ride." Sophia felt a sudden emptiness at the thought of his departure. "Of course," she said, striving to keep her voice steady. You've delayed your return long enough on my account." They stood awkwardly for a moment, neither quite ready to say goodbye. "I want to thank you," Sophia began. "For everything." "No need," Sam interrupted. "Anyone would have done the same." "No," Sophia said firmly. "Not anyone. What you did saving my wagon, escorting me here safely, it was extraordinary kindness, Sam." Sam looked embarrassed but pleased by her words. "Well," he said, "I'm glad I was there to help." Another awkward pause, and then Sam reached for her hand. "Good luck with your bookshop, Sophia. I hope Sweetwater proves to be everything you're looking for." His hand was warm around hers, calloused but gentle. Sophia found herself reluctant to let go. "Will I see you again?" she asked, then immediately wished she hadn't sounded so eager. Sam's expression softened. "I come to town every few weeks for supplies," he said. "And the ranch isn't so far, 20 miles or so south. Perhaps when you're settled, you might want to see it sometime." "I'd like that," Sophia said, smiling despite the lump in her throat. With a final squeeze of her hand, Sam released her and mounted his horse. "Goodbye, Sophia," he said, tipping his hat. "Goodbye, Sam," she replied, watching as he rode away down the main street until he disappeared from view. Martha appeared at her elbow. "Come along, dear," she said, her voice gentler than before. "Let me show you to your room, then we can talk about this bookshop of yours." The room was indeed lovely, spacious, with a large window overlooking the main street, a comfortable bed, a small writing desk, and a wardrobe. Sophia's trunks had already been brought up and placed at the foot of the bed. "It's perfect," Sophia told Martha. "Thank you." "Sam asked me to help you get settled," Martha said, her direct gaze making it clear she was curious about their relationship. "Said you had a bit of trouble on the trail." Sophia explained about the fire and Sam's timely rescue. As she spoke, she realized how much had happened in just a few days, how her entire perception of the West, and perhaps of herself, had shifted. "That sounds like Sam," Martha said when Sophia had finished. "Always in the right place at the right time, that one." "He mentioned helping me find a place for my bookshop," Sophia said. "Did he now?" Martha looked thoughtful. "Well, as it happens, the building next to the general store is vacant. Used to be a hardware store until old man Phillips retired last month. Might suit your purposes." "Could I see it?" Sophia asked eagerly. "I'll take you there myself after you've had a chance to freshen up," Martha promised. "And I believe you mentioned a friend in town, Julia Carter." "Yes, she's a dressmaker," Sophia confirmed. "I know Julia," Martha said with a nod. "Her shop is just down the street. We can stop there after we look at the building." The vacant store proved to be exactly what Sophia had envisioned for her bookshop, a good-sized front room with large windows, a smaller back room that could serve as storage or perhaps a reading area, and an apartment upstairs that would eventually make a perfect home once she was established. "The owner is asking $40 a month," Martha informed her. "Bit steep, but it's a good location." "It's perfect," Sophia said, already imagining shelves of books lining the walls. "I'll take it." Martha looked pleased. "I'll speak to Mr. Daniels about drawing up the papers." "Now, let's find your friend Julia." Julia's dressmaking shop was a tidy establishment with elegant gowns displayed in the window. When Sophia walked in, her friend looked up from her sewing machine, her expression changing from professional greeting to delight in an instant. "Sophia!" Julia exclaimed, rushing around the counter to embrace her. "You're here. I got your letter saying you were coming, but I wasn't sure when to expect you." The two women hugged tightly, then Julia held Sophia at arm's length to examine her. "You look wonderful," she declared. "A bit trail-worn, perhaps, but the journey obviously agreed with you." "It was eventful," Sophia said with a smile. "I'll tell you everything over tea." Martha excused herself, promising to return later with information about the store, and the two friends settled in the back room of Julia's shop with tea and the full story of Sophia's journey. "So this cowboy just appeared out of nowhere and saved your wagon?" Julia asked, eyes wide. "Like something from a novel, Sam Yeardley," Sophia confirmed, trying not to blush at the memory. "He was so kind, Julia. Escorted me all the way here, introduced me to Martha, even found a potential location for my bookshop." Julia's expression turned knowing. "And handsome, I assume, from the way your eyes light up when you speak of him." "Julia," Sophia protested but couldn't deny it. "Yes, he's handsome, but more importantly, he's good, truly good." "Sam Yeardley," Julia mused. "I know of him, though we've never been properly introduced." "He has a ranch south of town, doesn't he? Breeds horses." "Yes," Sophia said, surprised. "Do you know him?" "Only by reputation," Julia said. "He's well respected in these parts, keeps to himself mostly but always helps when there's trouble. There was a fire at the schoolhouse last winter. They say he rode through a blizzard to bring supplies for rebuilding." This information didn't surprise Sophia in the least. It aligned perfectly with the man she'd come to know over their brief time together. "And now he's caught your interest," Julia observed with a smile. "I hardly know him," Sophia protested weakly. "Sometimes a few days can tell you more about a person than years of acquaintance," Julia said wisely. "Now tell me about this bookshop of yours." Over the next few weeks, Sophia threw herself into establishing her new business. With Martha's help, she secured the lease on the store and began renovations. Julia introduced her to other business owners in town, and slowly, Sophia began to feel like part of the community. Her books arrived from St. Louis, crates of them that she had shipped ahead, and she spent happy hours unpacking and arranging them on the newly built shelves. She ordered more from publishers in Chicago and New York, focusing on practical texts that would appeal to the local population, but also including novels, poetry, and children's books. The apartment above the store needed work, so she continued to stay at Martha's boarding house, grateful for the older woman's practical advice and growing friendship. Martha introduced her to other residents of Sweetwater, including the schoolteacher, Miss Abigail Perkins, who was thrilled at the prospect of a proper bookshop in town. "My students have so few books to read," Miss Perkins told Sophia earnestly. "This will make such a difference in their education." Through it all, Sophia found herself watching for a tall figure on a chestnut horse, hoping each day that Sam might ride into town. But weeks passed with no sign of him, and she tried to tell herself it was better this way. She had come west to be independent, to build a new life on her own terms. Becoming distracted by a man, even one as admirable as Sam Yeardley, hadn't been part of her plan. One afternoon, as Sophia was arranging a display of new children's books in the front window of her shop, now proudly bearing the sign Ellis Books and Stationery, she glanced up to see a familiar horse and rider tethered outside the general store across the street. Her heart leapt, and she nearly knocked over the display in her haste to see better. It was indeed Sam, loading supplies into saddlebags. He looked much as she remembered, tall and capable in his work clothes, his hat pulled low against the sun. For a moment, Sophia debated whether to go out and greet him. Would he think her too forward? Before she could decide, Sam happened to glance her way. Their eyes met through the window, and after a startled moment, his face broke into a warm smile that made her knees weak. Setting aside his purchases, Sam crossed the street to her shop. Sophia smoothed her hair and straightened her apron, suddenly aware of the dust on her hands from unpacking books. The bell above the door jingled as Sam entered, removing his hat as he stepped inside. "Miss Ellis," he said, his smile widening. "I heard you'd opened your shop." Mr. Yeardley, Sophia replied, unable to keep the pleasure from her voice. Yes, just last week officially, though we're still getting organized, as you can see. Sam looked around appreciatively at the shelves of books, the comfortable chairs in the corner, the neat counter with its cash register. It looks wonderful, he said sincerely. You've accomplished a lot in a short time. I've had help, Sophia acknowledged. Martha has been invaluable, and Julia, and really the whole town has been welcoming. I'm glad to hear it, Sam said. There was a moment of awkward silence, and then they both spoke at once. I was wondering, would you like? They both stopped, then laughed. Ladies first, Sam said, his blue eyes crinkling at the corners. I was just going to ask if you'd like some tea, Sophia said. I keep a pot in the back room. I'd like that very much, Sam said. Sophia led him to the small back room she had set up as an office, where a kettle sat on a tiny stove. As she prepared the tea, Sam told her about his recent activities breaking new horses, repairing fences damaged in a storm, helping a neighbor round up stray cattle. And you? He asked as she handed him a cup. How are you finding Sweetwater? It's everything Julia promised, Sophia said honestly. The people are kind, the business prospects are good, and I feel free here in a way I never did in St. Louis. Sam nodded, understanding in his eyes. The territory has that effect on people, room to breathe, to be yourself. Exactly, Sophia agreed, pleased that he understood. Though I must admit I've thought often of our journey here. It was memorable. Sam's expression softened. I've thought of it too, he admitted. More than I probably should. There was something in his tone, a warmth that made Sophia's pulse quicken. Before she could respond, however, the bell over the shop door jingled. Excuse me, she said, reluctantly setting down her tea. Customer. The customer turned out to be Mrs. Bradford, who had come to town for supplies and wanted to purchase books for her children. She was delighted to see Sam, and the three of them chatted easily as Sophia helped her select appropriate titles. After Mrs. Bradford left, Sam lingered, looking at the shelves thoughtfully. I should be getting back to the ranch, he said finally, but I was wondering. Yes, Sophia prompted when he hesitated. There's a social at the church next Saturday, Sam said, his voice casual but his eyes intent. Dancing, food, the usual thing. I thought perhaps if you're not otherwise engaged, you might allow me to escort you. Sophia felt a rush of pleasure at the invitation. I'd like that very much, she said, trying to keep her voice steady. Sam's face lit up with a smile that transformed his features. Excellent, he said. I'll call for you at 7 if that suits. It does, Sophia confirmed, smiling back at him. With a tip of his hat and a promise to see her Saturday, Sam left the shop. Sophia watched him mount his horse and ride away, feeling a lightness in her heart that had been absent since they'd parted weeks before. The days until Saturday seemed to crawl by. Sophia threw herself into work, organizing books, serving customers, and continuing to settle into her new life. But her thoughts constantly returned to Sam and their upcoming evening together. On Saturday, she closed the shop early and returned to her room at the boarding house to prepare. She chose her best dress, a deep blue silk that Julia had helped her alter to the latest fashion, and spent extra time arranging her hair. Martha poked her head in just as Sophia was fastening a simple pearl necklace that had belonged to her mother. My, don't you look lovely, the older woman said with approval. Sam Yeardley won't know what hit him. Sophia blushed. It's just a church social. Martha said, unconvinced. Well, he's downstairs waiting and looking mighty fine himself. Sam had indeed made an effort. He wore a clean white shirt, dark trousers, and a vest, his usually unruly hair neatly combed. He stood when Sophia entered the parlor, and the admiration in his eyes made her blush deepen. You look beautiful, he said simply, "Thank you," Sophia replied. "You look quite handsome yourself." The church social was held in the community hall adjacent to the church itself. When they arrived, the space was already filled with what seemed like half the town. Tables laden with food lined one wall, while at the far end musicians were setting up a fiddler, a guitarist, and a man with a harmonica. "Sam," called a voice, and they turned to see Jim Bradford approaching, Mary on his arm. "Good to see you and Miss Ellis as well. Settling in all right?" "Very well, thank you," Sophia replied warmly. "And please call me Sophia." As the evening progressed, Sophia was introduced to what felt like the entire population of Sweetwater. Everyone seemed curious about the new bookshop owner, especially when she arrived on Sam Yeardley's arm. "Don't mind the gossips," Sam murmured as they helped themselves to punch after yet another introduction. "Small town. They don't get much excitement. I don't mind," Sophia assured him. "Everyone's been very kind. When the music started, Sam offered his hand. 'May I have this dance?' Sophia placed her hand in his, feeling a thrill as his fingers closed around hers. "I must warn you, I'm not very practiced," she said as he led her to the dance floor. "That makes two of us," Sam admitted with a grin. "We'll manage." And they did, moving together in a simple waltz. Sam was more graceful than he'd claimed, guiding her confidently through the steps. Sophia was acutely aware of his hand at her waist, the warmth of his palm against hers, the way his eyes never left her face. They danced several more times, interspersed with conversations with neighbors and sampling the abundant food. As the evening wore on, Sophia found herself relaxing completely in Sam's company, laughing at his dry observations and sharing stories of her first weeks in Sweetwater. It was nearly midnight when the social began to wind down. Families with children had already departed, and the remaining dancers moved more slowly, many couples swaying together rather than following formal steps. "Shall we step outside for some air?" Sam suggested as the musicians announced the final dance. The night was clear and cool, stars blanketing the sky in a way Sophia had never seen in the city. They stood on the church steps, and Sophia shivered slightly in the evening breeze. Without a word, Sam removed his jacket and placed it around her shoulders. The warmth of it and his lingering scent clean soap, leather, and something uniquely him enveloped her. "Thank you," she said softly. "For the jacket and for tonight. I've had a wonderful time." "So have I," Sam said, his voice equally soft. He was standing close enough that she could feel the warmth of him, see the moonlight reflected in his eyes. "Sophia, He trailed off, seeming to struggle for words, then simply reached out to touch her cheek gently. "May I call on you again?" He finally asked. "Yes," Sophia said without hesitation. "I'd like that very much." For a moment she thought he might kiss her, but instead he took her hand and raised it to his lips, pressing a gentle kiss to her knuckles. "I'll walk you back to the boarding house," he said. The walk back was quiet, a comfortable silence between them. At the door to the boarding house, Sam returned her hand with evident reluctance. "Good night, Sophia," he said. "I'll see you soon." "Good night, Sam," she replied, holding his gaze for a long moment before going inside. Martha was still up, reading in the parlor. She looked up as Sophia entered, a knowing smile on her face. "Good evening." "Wonderful," Sophia confirmed, unable to keep the happiness from her voice. "He's a good man, Sam Yeardley," Martha said, turning a page in her book. "Been waiting for someone like you, I think." Sophia wasn't sure how to respond to that, so she simply wished Martha good night and went upstairs, Sam's jacket still around her shoulders. Over the next few weeks, Sam found numerous reasons to come to town. Sometimes he would arrive with legitimate business supplies to purchase, horses to sell, messages to deliver. Other times his excuses were flimsier, checking on a book order, bringing Sophia wildflowers he claimed were growing too abundantly near his cabin, stopping by to see if she needed any repairs in the shop. Sophia looked forward to these visits with increasing eagerness. She found herself watching the street for his approach, her heart lifting whenever she spotted his familiar figure. They would talk for hours about books, about the territory, about their lives before meeting. Sometimes he would stay for dinner at the boarding house, where Martha would watch them with barely concealed approval. On one such evening, after a meal during which their hands had brushed several times and their eyes had met more often than strictly necessary, Sam invited Sophia to visit his ranch. "It's not much compared to some," he said, a hint of uncertainty in his voice that she found endearing. "But I'm proud of it, and I thought perhaps, if you'd like to see it." "I'd love to," Sophia said immediately. When they arranged for the coming Sunday, Sam would collect her after church and they would ride to the ranch together, returning before dark. Sunday dawned clear and beautiful. After the church service, Sam helped Sophia onto his second horse, a gentle mare named Daisy. The ride to the ranch took about 2 hours, during which Sam pointed out landmarks and shared stories of his early days in the territory. As they crested a hill, Sam's ranch came into view below a neat cabin with a wide porch, a large barn, corrals containing horses of various colors, and beyond, rolling pastures where cattle grazed. A creek wound through the property, lined with cottonwoods and willows. "It's beautiful," Sophia said sincerely. Sam looked pleased. "It's home," he said simply. He showed her around proudly the barn where he kept his prize stallions, the vegetable garden beside the cabin, the spring house where he kept milk and butter cool. The cabin itself was simple but comfortable, with a large stone fireplace, solid furniture that Sam had made himself, and shelves containing more books than Sophia had expected. "You really do read," she observed, examining his collection. "Told you," Sam said with a smile. "Winters are long." They had a picnic lunch on the porch, watching the horses in the nearest corral. As they ate, Sam talked about his plans for the ranch, expanding the herd, breeding more horses, perhaps building a larger house someday. "It's a lot of work for one person," Sophia observed. "Yes," Sam agreed, looking at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "It is." After lunch, Sam showed her his favorite spot on the property, a small rise overlooking the creek, where a single large oak tree provided shade. They sat beneath it, the dappled sunlight playing across their faces. "I come here to think," Sam said, "or just to enjoy the quiet." "I can see why," Sophia said, taking in the peaceful scene, the murmur of the creek, the gentle movement of leaves in the breeze, the distant lowing of cattle. "It's perfect." Sam was watching her, his expression serious now. "Sophia," he said, his voice low, "there's something I need to say." Sophia's heart began to beat faster. "Yes." "When I found you on the trail that day, your wagon on fire, you trying so desperately to save what was yours, I acted on instinct. Didn't think twice about helping." He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. "But since then, I've thought about it 1,000 times. About how easily we might never have met. How our paths might never have crossed if I'd taken a different route that day, or if you'd left St. Louis a day earlier or later." Sophia nodded, understanding exactly what he meant. She had had the same thoughts. "I'm not a man who believes much in fate," Sam continued, "but meeting you, it feels like something important, something I was waiting for without knowing it." He took her hand, his touch gentle but sure. "What I'm trying to say, probably poorly, is that I care for you, Sophia. More than I thought possible in such a short time." Joy bloomed in Sophia's chest, warm and bright. "I feel the same," she said softly. Sam's eyes lit up, and he reached out to touch her cheek gently. "May I kiss you?" he asked, his voice a near whisper. In answer, Sophia leaned forward, closing the distance between them. Their lips met in a kiss that was soft and sweet, a promise of things to come. When they parted, Sam's smile was radiant. "I've been wanting to do that since the church social," he admitted. "Why didn't you?" Sophia asked, still feeling the warmth of his lips on hers. "Wasn't sure you'd welcome it," Sam said, his thumb tracing her cheekbone. "Wasn't sure I deserved to." "Sam Yeardley," Sophia said firmly, "you are the most deserving man I know." He kissed her again, deeper this time, his arm slipping around her waist to draw her closer. Sophia melted into him, feeling as though everything in her life had been leading to this moment, this man. When they finally made their way back to town that evening, something had shifted between them, a deeper understanding, a shared acknowledgement of feelings that had been growing since their first meeting. Over the following months, their courtship progressed steadily. Sam found reasons to be in town more often, sometimes staying for days at a time, taking a room at the hotel rather than the long ride back to his ranch. Sophia's bookshop thrived, becoming a gathering place for the community. She began hosting reading groups and ordered special books for customers upon request. She also made friends, Julia, of course, but also Mary Bradford, Miss Perkins, the school teacher, and several other women in town. Martha became something of a surrogate mother, dispensing advice both solicited and not. "When's that cowboy of yours going to make an honest woman of you?" Martha asked bluntly one evening as they sat in the boarding house parlor. Sophia nearly choked on her tea. "Martha." "Don't Martha me," the older woman said, unrepentant. "Anyone with eyes can see where this is heading. Has been since he brought you to town with stars in your eyes and him looking like he'd found gold." "It's only been 4 months," Sophia protested, though the thought of marrying Sam made her heart race. "Time doesn't matter when it's right," Martha said with the confidence of experience. "My Harold proposed after 6 weeks. We had 42 good years together before he passed." Sophia couldn't argue with that. And the truth was, she had been thinking about a future with Sam more and more lately. When she visited the ranch, she found herself imagining living there, adding curtains to the windows, expanding the garden, filling the cabin with more books and perhaps, someday, children's laughter. The proposal, when it came, was quintessentially Sam, straightforward, heartfelt, and unexpected. It was a Tuesday afternoon in late autumn. Sophia was in the shop, unpacking a new shipment of books when Sam arrived with a small crate in his arms. "Delivery," he announced, setting it on the counter. "I wasn't expecting anything else," Sophia said, puzzled. "Special order," Sam replied with a smile that made her suspicious. "Open it." Sophia pried open the crate to find a single book inside a beautiful leather-bound volume. She lifted it out carefully and read the title, Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. "You mentioned it was your favorite," Sam said, watching her reaction. "Your copy was damaged in the fire." "Sam," Sophia said, deeply touched, "this is lovely, but it must have cost." "Open it," Sam interrupted gently. Sophia opened the book to find that the center had been hollowed out, and nestled inside was a simple gold ring with a small diamond. Her breath caught, and she looked up to find Sam watching her with anxious eyes. "Sophia Ellis," he said, taking her hand, "from the moment you appeared on the trail fighting to save your wagon with more courage than sense, you've had my heart. I know it hasn't been long, but I can't imagine my life without you in it." He took the ring from the book and knelt before her. "Will you marry me? Make a home with me, share my life, allow me to share yours?" Joy welled up in Sophia's chest, so intense she could barely speak. "Yes," she managed, tears blurring her vision. "Yes, Sam, I will." The ring slid onto her finger, a perfect fit. Sam stood and pulled her into his arms, kissing her with a tenderness that made her knees weak. They were married a month later in Sweetwater's small church, with what seemed like the entire town in attendance. Julia was Sophia's bridesmaid, Jim Bradford stood up with Sam, and Martha insisted on hosting the reception at the boarding house. "Never seen Sam look so happy," Jim commented as they watched the newly married couple during the celebration. "Like he's finally found what he's been searching for all these years." After the wedding, Sophia moved to the ranch, bringing her books and the life she had begun to build in Sweetwater. She continued to run the bookshop, riding into town 3 days a week while Sam managed the ranch. It wasn't always easy. The winter was harsh. Spring brought flooding, and running both a business and a household required constant work, but they faced each challenge together. One evening a year after their wedding, they sat on the porch of their cabin, now expanded with a new wing that housed Sophia's personal library and a spare bedroom for visitors. The sunset painted the sky in shades of orange and pink, and a gentle breeze carried the scent of wildflowers from the prairie. "You ever think about that day?" Sam asked, his arm around her shoulders. "When your wagon caught fire?" "Often," Sophia admitted, leaning into his embrace. "It was terrifying at the time, but now—" "Now," Sam prompted. "Now I see it as the luckiest day of my life," Sophia said, turning to look into his eyes. "The day I met you." Sam smiled, the same smile that had captivated her from the beginning. "Who would have thought a burning wagon would lead to this?" he mused. "I'd go through it all again," Sophia said honestly. "Every moment of fear, every hardship on the trail, if it meant finding you." Sam kissed her then, a kiss full of promise and shared dreams. As the last rays of sunlight faded from the sky, they remained on the porch. Two people who had found in each other everything they hadn't known they were seeking, all because a wagon caught fire on the trail, and a cowboy beat the flames with his coat.